All right, welcome to video 4 of Unit 10. We are going to continue on with this U.S. response to World War II. Today, specifically looking at the U.S. home front during World War II. Now, the perception of the war is going to change with one huge event. We are going to very quickly switch from isolation, supporting neutrality, to supporting all out fighting in the war. And that one event that triggers the United States to switch so quickly is Pearl Harbor, the attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. Now, I don't ask you guys to remember a whole lot of dates, but December 7th, 1941 is a date that you have to remember. It is the date that FDR deems a day that will live in infamy because it is the first real time that the United States is attacked on United States soil, okay, by a foreign enemy. Sure, we can go back to the Revolutionary War and we can talk about the War of 1812 and we can talk about how during those two conflicts we were attacked, but this is a whole new level, okay? This is an unprovoked, completely out of the blue, or at least most people perceive it that way, attack on the United States during a time where we were just trying to stay neutral, given a few of our actions. Tensions between the United States and Japan had been growing. The United States did not want Japan becoming a Japanese empire. We did not appreciate how Japan was treating China. We did not like how Japan was going out and collecting the resources that they wanted, basically taking what was not theirs. And the United States takes steps against Japan, putting an embargo on Japan, preventing them from getting what they want. And those actions of the United States are going to pit Japan against the US. When FDR attempts to stop the expansion of Japan by putting that embargo on imports specifically of oil, which hurt Japanese military actions, Japan is going to want revenge because the United States will not compromise over this issue of expansion. The United States says, Japan, you need to chill. You are not going to become this big bad empire, and you're not going to do it by sacrificing innocent civilians. And because of this disagreement, Japan is going to want to hurt the United States. And the way they believe that they can hurt us the best is by attacking Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was in a unique position because if Japan successfully attacked Pearl Harbor, then the United States would be pushed further away from the mainland of Japan. Basically, Japan wanted to remove us from the Pacific Ocean, and Pearl Harbor was a huge naval port that, if it was actually damaged, would really hurt our presence in the Pacific. The United States is going to suffer a heavy loss when Pearl Harbor is attacked, but it's not heavy enough to completely destroy, in the way that Japan wanted to destroy, our naval efforts. What this does, the only thing that Pearl Harbor does, is push the United States to declare war. Congress declares war against Japan just within 24 hours. By December 8th, we have a formal declaration of war against Japan. Within a week of Pearl Harbor, Congress is going to pass what's known as the War Powers Act. This War Powers Act opened up all of the doors for FDR to conduct any efforts that he needed for the war with very little check from Congress. Congress said we need to act fast. The only way that we can act fast is by removing some of these restraints on the president. Go ahead. War Powers Act offers that up so that FDR can make very quick decisions when it comes to the war effort. The peacetime draft is going to steadily grow because now we need an active draft. We go from 1.5 million members to 12 million members by the war's end. And a big reason that people were so open to this draft, which is kind of the last time that we're really going to see this much open support for the draft, is because of Pearl Harbor. FDR is even going to create the Women's Auxiliary Forces at the advice of his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt. This is going to allow women to serve both at home and abroad. While women aren't really going to be in active combat, they are going to be flying and moving planes. They are going to be actively on the battlefields as nurses, okay? So you're going to see a bigger presence of women in World War II. By drafting a large number of the working population, a labor shortage is created. We've heard this story before. This all happened during World War I. But how we handle it is different this time. Back at home, the United States is going to wage what's called a work or fight campaign. So all Americans have two jobs that they can do, and everybody is encouraged to do their part. Either they can work in the factories producing for the war, or they can go and actually fight in the war. Those are your options. The United States is going to increase production in order to make sure that the Allies win the war. What allows us to really focus on the production for the war is a government agency, the War Productions Board. This is going to be created in 1942, so just a month, very quickly after the attack on Pearl Harbor. And it sets up a board that is going to oversee the transition into a wartime economy. So it's going to tell factories what to produce, how much of it to produce, and make sure that everybody has a job in order to keep that production going. Taxes are going to be increased in order to generate money for the war, and people are totally down with it. People are going to be getting jobs in droves now. The Great Depression, we are coming out of it with flying colors because of the production needed for the war. And these taxes are going to be easily coughed up by the people because we want to win the war. After Pearl Harbor, everybody's like, I'll give whatever money you need. Again, the government is going to use the tactics of World War I in this prepping for war, and they're going to sell liberty and victory bonds again. And they'll use propaganda like what you see on the screen there. Save to beat the devil, buy victory bonds, and the devil there being pictured as Hitler. People want to fight against the Axis powers, and if giving money on the home front is their only way to do that, then they're more than happy to. We are going to see women enter the workforce. Rosie the Riveter is used in order to encourage women to enter the workforce. Rosie the Riveter is World War II. This is pushed, the campaign is pushed that women can do the jobs that men can do, and we need more women like Rosie to go in and do those jobs. 6.5 million women enter the workforce during the war years because of the big push by this Rosie the Riveter campaign. Like I mentioned before, the massive defense spending is going to pull the United States out of the Great Depression. Everybody's going to have a job. Everybody who wants a job has a job now. There isn't really competition for people to get a job because there was so much need for wartime goods that companies were producing triple and quadruple overtime. Americans are going to be issued stamp books to encourage conservation for the war efforts. And people are open to this idea of conservation. I know that today it might be a little bit difficult to get people on board with something like that, but coming off of the Great Depression where people had nothing, conserving really wasn't that bad. It was still a step up from the Depression. So people are on board. Again, we're going to see the victory gardens come about and be encouraged, people growing their own food instead of buying it from the grocery store. Something different that comes out during World War II than World War I are victory speeds. People were encouraged to slow down, conserve on fuel, because now we need that fuel for our planes, for our ships. And production of consumer goods are going to be put at a standstill. Goods that we saw being produced in the beginning of the 1920s all the way through the cars, the washing machines, the vacuums, even women's nylons. Okay, a lot of that stuff is going to be put on hold because those items used products that were needed to make products for the war. Think about all that goes into a car: the rubber, the steel, the glass. All of that could be used to make a plane, a tank, guns. Okay, we're gonna instead use those goods to produce what's needed for war. And again, people are going to be pretty open to this idea of stopping the production of consumer goods because they really hadn't been buying them in that high of numbers anyway. So what difference does it make if we bring down the production? That the depression really helps set up the mentality that was needed for World War II, for the idea of conservation. And the encouragement for supporting the war is going to come from all different angles. First, we're going to have the Office of War Information. This Office of War Information is going to put out all the propaganda that is possible. Okay, you're going to see propaganda everywhere. And it's meant to appeal to the patriots in the United States. It's meant to tell them, like, hey, you want to protect your family? Make sure that you give to the war effort. You want to make sure that your wives and children are protected, give to the war effort. You want to make sure that your house doesn't get bombed, make sure that you donate to the war effort. Propaganda movies are going to be made. You're going to see movies like Destination Tokyo to encourage the support for the war. Movies like Casablanca, painting the enemy as the enemy for people to watch in the theater. And maybe they didn't really have to exaggerate that much, but of course they're going to Hollywood it up to make sure that people really feel the fear and encourage the support for the war. The government will remind people at every turn that every dollar spent on war bonds was a dollar towards supplies for the war that could lead to a victory and a quick end to World War II. And a lot of people are going to say, we'll do anything we can to, one, make sure that we don't get attacked again after the attack on Pearl Harbor, and two, to make sure that whoever in our family got sent over to the war is safe. Because my dollar might be given to weaponry that gets put in their hand to put down the enemy and make sure they come home safe. So, a lot of this that we're doing during World War II comes from we have to change the mindset of the people after World War I, but it's made very easy after that attack on Pearl Harbor. Next time we come together, we're going to talk about the fighting, the actual combat in World War II. We've got two different pieces to that because we're going to basically be fighting two wars in one war. So next time we come together, look forward to the fighting in World War II.